back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alicia and I make sewing and DIY fashion tutorials. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this super adorable V-neck and button-up blouse. I'm not really sure how to call this blouse, but I have been seeing a lot as dress bodices, and I decided that I would make it into a top. So the fabric that I'm going to be using today is actually one of the bed sheets that I used to use when I was a kid. I sort of wanted to play with this cute and juvenile fabric with a more mature looking design. And also, I chose it to be pink, especially to match my new pink hair. If you guys have noticed my earrings over here, these are 100% handmade origami earrings that is actually made by my friends here in Montreal. So I have 3 designs to show you guys today, and all of them are super cute, 100% handmade as I said earlier, which means it is also sustainable. And the price is only $10, which is such a steal. And they also take requests, so you can even choose which origami paper you want, which design. You can even customize the beads. It is 100% customizable. And to purchase these, you can just contact them onto their Instagram and just send them a DM. So yeah, let's get started with the tutorial. To make the pattern, use a fitted shirt as a template. Fold it in half and also fold it at your desired length. Trace the bodice onto the pattern paper, but I like to use gift wrapping paper. Add ½ inch of seam allowance all around and cut it out. Repeat the same thing for the back, but extend the sides by an extra 1.5 inches. We want the back to be bigger to add some elastic later. For the front piece, mark 9 inches below the neckline and 13 inches below the shoulder seam, and connect these 2 markings with a curved line. Just like this, and then cut it out. And add seam allowance to both pieces. We'll call this the front triangle and this the top. Add a marking on the top at 3 inches and connect it to the shoulder seam. Cut it out, and as always, leave some seam allowance. Next, we're going to do the slash and spread method to widen the top. Trace 3 lines that are spread out evenly, just like this. And cut it out. It will give you 4 pieces that you can freely move around, and I spaced them at around ½ inch at the shoulder and 1 inch at the bottom. And the front and back pattern should look something like this. Now to move on to the sleeve, I traced the sleeve of a loose fitting shirt and added about 3 inches to its length. Using the same slash and spread method as earlier, I traced 3 evenly spaced lines and cut them out, but let the ends of the sleeve connected because we only need to widen the sleeve cap. I spaced them at about ½ inch, taped it onto some new paper, and cut the new sleeve shape out. And here is the sleeve pattern. Fold the fabric in half and place the pattern pieces on top of it. Make sure that the back piece is on the fold of the fabric and trace all of the pieces out. And when that's done, cut it out. You should have a full back piece and a mirror top piece and front triangle piece. Repeat the same thing for the sleeves. With the fabric on fold, trace it out and then cut it. And of course, you're going to need 2 sleeves. Also cut out a 1.5 inch wide strip of fabric that will be used for the front facing. Next, we'll be adding some interfacing to the front triangle pieces to make them more sturdier. Cut 2 pieces of interfacing by using the pattern and then iron it onto the fabric. Okay, so now that I cut everything up, we can start sewing. I'm gonna start by adding some ruffles to the top. So I'm gonna ruffle the shoulder seam and also the curve at the bottom. And also, I just bleached my roots today, that's why I have blonde and pink hair. I'm gonna give my hair a rest before I actually dye it pink, but I'm actually digging the look. This like blonde roots and pink ends, I don't know. Oh. Let's start sewing. create the ruffles, pull on one of the threads and gather the fabric until it reaches the same length as the back shoulder. Add some ruffles to the bottom curve as well, and do that until it's the same length as the front triangle. Also, try to concentrate the ruffles in the middle, and it'll make it look a lot better. Place the top and the front triangle right sides together, pin it carefully, and sew. To make sure the ruffles come out nicely, I tried to sew right on top of the first stitch that we did. And repeat that for the other side. I also decided to add a top stitch at the edge of the front triangle piece, just because somehow it made the ruffles look better. Place the back piece right sides together to the front piece and sew the shoulder seams. And I also added a top stitch. And here are the shoulders. Moving on to the sleeves, I only realized this later, but the end of the sleeve should be straight and not flare out like mine. Sew a basting stitch right in the middle of the sleeve and at the sleeve cap. Open up the bodice piece and ruffle the sleeve until it's the same length as the armhole. Place it right sides together and pin it carefully. Pinning two opposite curved shapes can be a bit difficult, but I like to start in the middle and pin until I reach both ends. And sew it with a straight stitch. Next, place the front and back right sides together and sew the sleeve and side seams closed. Okay, so I tried the top on. It looks really good so far, but I think I misdrew the armhole. The sleeves are very off. So I think I'm just going to have to recut the armhole. Yeah, these droopy sleeves are not gonna cut it for me. So I guess it's time to redo the sleeves. So I seam ripped both of the sleeves off, and I also marked where I want the new armhole to be. So I'm just going to cut that out. I sewed the sleeves again, and now we can continue. Before hemming the sleeves, remove about 1 inch of the basting stitch from earlier. Make sure to not cut them off, but just undo them carefully because we'll need the threads to add some ruffles. Fold in the edge twice to make a rolled hem and sew it. Now to add the side ruffle detailing. Pull on one of the threads and gather the fabric to make tiny ruffles. You really need to ruffle it just a tiny bit to create this ruched effect. When you like the amount of ruffles added, sew on top of the basting stitch to lock in the ruffles. So I'm actually going to meet up with my friend soon, but just before that, I'm going to explain to you guys the last steps to do. So to add the button placket, earlier I cut 2 1.5 inch strips of fabric, but after inspecting a top I already had that was those buttons with the elastic loop, there's one side that actually has a sort of fabric extension, I guess you could call it. So for that I'm just going to cut an extra piece of fabric that's about 3 inches. So for the buttons and the elastic loops, I actually got them off of Etsy. Instead of making my own loops one by one, I just decided to buy this because it's a lot easier, and I bought these beautiful pink vintage buttons that I'm pretty excited to put onto this top. I started by cutting the elastic loops and hand sewing it onto the right side of the shirt. Place the facing right sides together and sew the side in at about 1/2 inch. You have to be careful when working with these elastic loops to sew as close as possible to the edge of the elastic, or else it won't be stretchy enough to go around the button. And when you fold the facing in, the elastic loop should look like this. To hide the raw edges, fold the facing in once and a second time. Pin it down and sew it. And the right side of the top is complete. Hem the neckline and the bottom of the top with a rolled hem. Same thing as the sleeves, fold it in twice and sew. Now to move on to the left side of the top. So I cut this long strip of fabric that is 3.5 inches wide. I'm going to add 1.5 inches of interfacing on this side. So just like this, and then sew it in place. It'll give something like this. Cut away the excess fabric and fold it where the interfacing ends. That's what's going to make the fabric extension. The same thing we did with the facing, fold in the raw edges and sew it down. Also tuck in the edges at the top and bottom before sewing. And here's what it looks like. And now to add the vintage buttons on. I marked a dot in the middle of each elastic loop and placed the buttons on top. At this point, I realized there were probably a bit too many buttons, but I wasn't sure, so I asked you guys on Instagram if you preferred a whole row of buttons or less buttons. And the one with the less buttons won, so I cut off every other elastic loop, which was very sad because they were looking so good. But anyways, after that, I hand sewed the buttons in and the front is done. Before buttoning up the shirt, there is one more thing to do, and that's to add some elastic to the back. The elastic loops are quite hard to button, so I made the back stretchy to be able to get in and out of the top without needing to touch the buttons. I sewed 4 rows of elastic spaced at about 3/4 of an inch. I pinned the elastic at the middle and at the ends. And to sew it, just pull on the elastic as you sew. Repeat that for all 4 rows, and that's it. Here's the final transformation. I really like how this top turned out. The only thing that I would fix is that the neckline is a little loose, and I also wasn't expecting it to be this cropped. I thought it would at least cover my belly button. I'm not sure what happened, but I really like the silhouette. I love how the pattern and the buttons match perfectly with my hair. And yeah, here's to another successful DIY. Hope you enjoyed it. And also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more sewing tutorials and other DIY fashion videos. And also follow me on Instagram at Ali Jansen. And also follow my friend's shop, the DIY origami earrings. I'll put it in my description also. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!